next guest is Bohdi B., who is an ordained interfaith minister in the Sufi lineage of Hasrat Inat Kam and Sam Lewis. And he's an independent funeral director, hospice volunteer, death midwife, end-of-life and bereavement counselor, ceremony guide, and notary public. He is also a coffin maker and crematory apprentice, a Maui resident of 36 years, and together with his wife, children, and grandchildren grow fruit, vegetables on their organic, off-the-grid homestead and love. And Bohdi B. and his wife, Leila, are definitely love. There's no doubt.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, good. We can hear you perfectly. And you have been working with death and dying. I know you have two websites I want to announce. One is called doorwayintolight.org. And this is about recognizing death as a sacred and spiritual passage. And this is something that you've been doing with Leila and Ram Dass and quite a number of other people as well, isn't it?
Yes. 2006, we started an organization, and at the time I was making friends with Ram Dass, and he said he wanted to help. And after being a hospice volunteer for 10 years, looking around at the funeral industry, the cemetery industry, the institutions around hospice, I saw what was being available and what wasn't being made available, and decided to get into it.
Had you had any thought about doing something like this? I mean, because you say funeral director, and before this, did this just come?
No, not really. Until I looked around and saw again what was available and what wasn't available, and I didn't need to go to school to be a funeral director in Hawaii. I just needed to basically jump through some of their hoops, and I thought, well, I could help people like. It's easy to see that the funeral industry, which is a massive industry, needs to be transformed, and it needs to be transformed by people with consciousness and awareness to basically take it back from big business and return it to community work and sacred service.
Right. And it feels like I remember you came and did an evening at our house, and there were like 50 people that came, and it was such a powerful experience. I want to really recommend this evening if you can come, because there's a certain time when you realize that you're mortal, or that your family is mortal, your parents are, or you've been around people when this was occurring, just the process of whether someone's injured and then is going to not make it, and we're so afraid of it.
We tend to think other people die. I mean, most people I know are whatever demographic, even spiritual communities. There's so much aversion, denial, avoidance. It's pretty thick, and that's kind of what I'm taking on, because I think that inability to have a living relationship with our approaching death causes what I would call life phobia, the inability to be fully alive. And I think that is part of why we're eating the planet.
Oh, that's a really interesting thought that I'm sure most of us never have even felt before.
So what we've done we've opened up what we're out to do now is revolutionize and reinvent the funeral home itself. So we've opened up a funeral home on Maui called the Death Store, and we call it a funeral home and resource center for people who are dying, their families, the grieving, and all who may die one day. And we offer pretty much all the services of a funeral home. We won't do embalming, but we also have a bookstore. We sell home funeral supplies, and we offer all kinds of counseling services and referrals for anyone really that wants to educate themselves because someone they know is dying, or they're dying, or they want to explore their own approaching death. And of course, I get a lot of flack for calling it the Death Store, although I knew right away that was the name of it, because the word death itself is pretty much left out of the cultural conversation.
Right.
So I joke around with people who say they want me to change the name to something, they want me to call it something like Till We Meet Again, or happy endings or something. Of course, I couldn't do that.
No, and if people go on, if you're sitting at home listening, or if you have a chance when you get home, go to thedeathstore.com, and they have a section, I'm looking at it right now, called The Lighter Side. And it's really actually kind of pokes fun at all of us. And you have coffee to die for.
Yeah.
I love it.
Two kinds, the caffeinated and the decaffeinated.
And the thing is, I mean, for me, death is just a doorway. But when we're the ones left behind, because my husband passed, and the ones left behind, it takes us time to, even though if you have an awareness that death is a doorway and that the person, their body's gone, but their energy, their love is still there, you still feel it and it's in your field. It doesn't still take time to get, over, or to be able to handle being left behind.
Well, I tell people not to get over it, period. Don't get over it. But we in the West have a funny sense of time. You're not really a person until you're born, and you cease being a person when you die. It's many cultures have a different relationship with time than we do. And people say, I lost my husband, I lost my parent, I lost my child. And I've had people close to me die, so I understand where that's coming from. But I speak right to that, because how did you actually lose them? I mean, you can lose your car keys, you can lose your wallet, right. But how did you lose your husband?
Right.
And you lost them, right? How did you lose them?
He passed away. So that's true, because normally I'm a hypnotherapist, and when you say you lose, like you want to lose weight, you usually find it again, and you're not going to find your partner again in the same way that you had them before.
No, but you could certainly not lose them, or you can go find them.
Right. In a different way, a different form. Right. So does it matter what religious affiliation that you have to work with you?
Absolutely not. That's one of the things I appreciate about this work. Everybody has some kind of relationship or non-relationship with death that it really transcends their particular religious affiliation. As far as people's particular religious views about what happens after you die, I don't. That's not my area. I don't work in that area. I have my own views about it, but I don't work in that area. In fact, I'm much more concerned. People say, "What's your view about life after death?" And my answer is usually, I'm much more interested in what's their life before death.
Right. That's great.
That's what I'm really after. That the transformation of human consciousness is what's going to turn what's happening in the world around, and that death has become the medium for deep living for me, deep living and awakened life. But certainly, in terms of as the baby boomers have discovered death by either watching their parents die or starting to see their friends die, they're looking around and seeing what's available and what's not available. And there's a tremendous amount that isn't available. And two, it needs to be taken back from an industry and business where so many of us have felt not prayed for, but preyed upon by a funeral home that recognizes that we're in shock, we're emotionally out of balance, we're super out of the logical ability, and we're being taken advantage of by an industry that knows exactly how to do it. Because after all, it's the last present you're going to give to your grandma.
So my question is, we are here on Kauai and you're there on Maui. Can you do this with us here? I mean, like the burial. There's actually a really wonderful question and answer part on the website, the Death Store. And you're talking about what's an ocean body burial. Like, I mean, most people probably didn't even know that they could do that.
I want to meet with, I'd like to visit the funeral homes on Kauai because I have a relationship with a funeral home here on Maui that gives me a direct price for cremation so that I can save people tons of money. And I'd like to find a way and some people on Kauai who want to help me create a death store or at least a presence, not necessarily a store, but a presence, so that I could do the funeral director piece of it, and we could help the Kauai people directly with home burial, home funeral, direct cremation, and direct burial.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be wonderful. I think that when you come here, a lot of people are going to want to assist you, because we don't have that here. And I know with my own, my partner passing, I was all those things you just said. I was like freaked out, didn't know what to do, let someone else kind of do it for me, because I didn't know what the rules and the laws were.
Right.
And we never talked about it. It was something
Yep.
we never talked about.
Yeah.
So a lot of people listening might kind of be afraid of even looking at this subject, but even just looking at it for yourself in the future, what would you want yourself, and how would you do it, and how would you leave a message for others? This would be a great evening to come to. So I like the death midwife services. I mean, what a great way to express it. Can you tell us what that means?
Well, it's pretty much exactly how people who've had home births and what the midwife does in those situations. For the most part, a good midwife stays out of the way and lets nature do its thing, and is there as supportive, holding space presence to support nature doing its thing. And a death midwife is pretty much the same thing. In a very confident, present way, I can show up for people and help hold space, and be able also be in the place of where that family is at. I mean, if it's tragic, I can show up in that place. If it's the doorway, I can show up in that place, and basically supporting nature to do its thing, because nature does it really well.
Mm. Yeah. Now,
and of course, the difference between the baby, the birth scenario, and the death scenario, the big difference, of course, is the worst case for me is that the patient dies. And actually, that's the best case.
Right. So in this kind of work, doing it from, you have all about the permit processes. Are they the same in each county, or is it something that we'll have to create in our county that may or may not be available at this time?
No, I work with the state directly.
Oh, okay.
And Hawaii's got the same thing going everywhere.
Wow, that's great. So the doorway into light, then, the work that you're doing with that. Now, do you put on seminars and things like that also?
We just put on one last night with a man named Stephen Jenkinson. He's got a great website, orphanwisdom.com. And we did an evening last night called The Making of Elders. And we packed the house last night. There were over 125 people. I filled this room last night.
Wow.
For 3 hours. But since 2006, we've been putting on community education events, trainings, and workshops, bringing in people like Joan Halifax and Frank Ostaseski, and a number of people, Jerry Grace Lyons, who's at the forefront of the home funeral movement in America. And so, that's what we've been doing for 6 years now. At the same time, we've been putting on a free first Monday of the month, the next one's tomorrow night, for more than 5 years now, called Speaking of Death, which is really an open gathering of people who maybe want to grieve, or want to be held in safe space to grieve, or just want to explore particular areas that they're working through, or again, people that wanting to explore and be around the subject and exploring death.
Well, that's great. I can see that you had one called Dying into Love. These names
Dying
are...
into Love is actually a video series people can buy online. If you Google Dying into Love, Borglum, the director of the Living Dying Project, and myself, and took 18 hours of footage and turned it into 20 and 30-minute segments. And if you go on Google Dying into Love, you can watch a few snippets, just get a taste of what that's about.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. I feel like, is there anyone, okay, if someone here wants to know more or be part of what you're doing, are you, so that they can bring it here or bring you and it here, what would they do?
First of all, they could email me at Bohdi@doorwayinthelight.org.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you next weekend.
Raj, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, thank you. And you have a beautiful day.
Thank you very much. You too.
All right. Aloha.
Aloha, Raj.